We are here to talk about the paranormal, as we are each and every Saturday night. Tim Weisberg here, the silent assassin Matt Costa. Science advisor Matt Moniz is off tonight. He's actually at the Burke. He's just running around doing some paperwork stuff for something that we'll be talking about in just a moment. We're going to have John Brightman pop on for a second here to give us an update on an event that we'll be taking part in next week. But first, I just want to remind everybody, as we get into the fall here, there'll be some weeks when we're not here. There might be some weeks when it's just like Moniz and Matt here. There'll be some weeks when you're not going to hear us on the radio because there's Red Sox games, and also the station is running college football games as well. Not a lot of college football games. There's just a select few on the slate. But on those nights, when they're running games on WBSM, you'll hear us exclusively on YouTube and on the Spooky South Coast app and on SpookySouthCoast.com. I think they're trying to set it up, Matt, so that we can stream over the WBSM stream eventually. So that even though you won't hear us on WBSM radio, the WBSM.com stream will carry us, which means that app will also carry us. But for now, what do you need that other app for? You got the Spooky South Coast app. That's all you need. And that's where you can find out everything that's going on. You can find out everything about the show, watch past episodes, watch the live episodes, join in the chat room, and also find out about the different events that we will be at. And as I mentioned, next Saturday night, Stephanie and I will be at an event that some things have changed a little bit. So we're going to bring on right now John Brightman of Bright Star Promotions. He's the one that's putting on the event, and he's going to kind of give us the rundown, the skinny of what's been happening. Good evening, John. Hold on a second here. I got to make sure that I don't put you on over the football game and put you on here. All right, you with us, John?
Yes, I am.
All right. So, first of all, thank you for popping on a little bit, and thank you for having us come to this event, even though some things have changed a little bit. We're honored that you asked us to be part of it. So, thank you for that.
There's no thanks needed. You guys are great friends of mine, and I love both you guys to death. All three of you guys that are on there. Well, there's four people, but three of you that I know that are here tonight.
We know that you don't like the one that isn't here. You don't have to pretend. He's not here.
And no, I'm just glad that you guys can all be a part of it. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a fun event.
So, of course, it wouldn't be a paranormal event if there wasn't some sort of issues. There's always going to be something that pops up. And with this, we're like a week away from this event. It's next Saturday night. So we thought everything was going smooth. We thought everything was going right. And then all of a sudden a monkey wrench yesterday.
Yes, it did. It popped in. Unfortunately, it popped in that there's circumstances beyond our control at the Victorian Mansion in Gardner, the S.K. Pierce house. And I guess the town basically says that we can't have an event there due to things that need to be fixed at the house, that they just want everything finished before they can fully open up to the public. So, unfortunately, we have to move the location. We tried our hardest. You, Stephanie, have been working on this unbelievably with all you've done, because I've been on vacation and I woke up to this message, and thank God that you guys had already jumped on and helped me out. And I can't say thank you enough to you guys, but we were able to secure a new location with your help, and I think people are going to love it no matter what, because now we're getting 2 times the location that we were at the mansion. And that's not to say the mansion isn't great. We're just getting 2 amazing locations instead of 1.
Right, and that's the thing about the S.K. Pierce Mansion. It's a fantastic place to visit and to investigate, but people don't understand that the town has been causing problems for the different ownership of the house over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Yep. They keep running into all kinds of stumbling blocks. The first event that we tried to put on there with Legend Trips, we were told we couldn't have an event 4 days out from the event because there was no running water and no bathrooms. So I had
no heat.
And well, yeah, but they didn't care about the fact that there was no heat.
No.
They were fine with people freezing. They were just worried about them not being able to take a dump during the event.
And really.
So what we ended up doing is, for that event, we had to hire a fire marshal.
Right.
Who actually ended up taking part in the investigation himself, which I was like, wait a minute, why am I paying you all this money to be here
Right.
when you're doing the things that all the people that paid money to be? But anyway, he was a great guy. And then I had to rent a porta potty.
You did.
I was scrambling to try to find a porta potty to have out in the front yard that
Right.
people had to walk out in the November cold to use instead of having a bathroom.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
And then the second time when we had the event last year, some of the stuff started to come up again where there were issues. And I had to make a phone call to the Board of Health to say, okay, well, we're going to use the bathroom at the pizza shop. They said they're going to stay open. And we had to work out all kinds of hoops there. And I don't want to get into some of the behind the scenes stuff of, why the town is coming down on this event. But the bottom line is that's the reason this had to happen. It's because of the town. It's not the owners. It's not John. It's not anything to do with anything except that the town has had, the city of Gardner has had issues with this from day one. And for some reason, they let an event happen 2 weeks ago, but now they're coming down on this one. So, as you said, John, we were able to move it to Winchendon, to the Murdoch Whitney House, and the Isaac Morse House across the street. And the Winchendon Historical Society and Don O'Neill over there, they've been great to work with over the years with legend trips. And when this came up, I said, that's only 15 minutes away. It's like the next town over. Anybody that already made travel arrangements or hotel arrangements, it's still right in the wheelhouse for them to be able to still go there. Let's see if we can get that house. And Don was more than happy to accommodate us that night. And like you said, John, it's going to be basically 2 houses now for the price of one. Both of them are huge. The Murdoch Whitney House, I've had some great strange experiences in there. The Isaac Morse House, I only got a tour of it. I haven't actually had a chance to investigate it yet, so I'm going to try and get over there during the course of next Saturday night and check out some of that stuff. They've built an ice cream parlor on the first floor. So, Stephanie, Don has said if we can get there before the ice cream parlor closes, he's going to make us awesome ice cream sundaes.
Well, listen, you just have to talk to John because John's driving. And if you've ever driven anywhere with him, you know that you get there in lightning speed. So I think we'll be okay.
But I know that you're the ice cream fan. So you're the one that will make sure that it happens.
I am. So
we got to make sure, and I think you will agree, I know Porter will agree, but I think we have to make sure that the Paranormal Princess is well taken care of. So we have to get her ice cream.
Really?
Well, if Don can't make her a sundae, we'll find one somewhere. So, but now the advantage of this, John, is like you said, we have double the space now. And it was already a very limited event to begin with. But now with having 2 buildings, it only makes sense to say, okay, well, we could probably get a few more people involved in this event now, right?
Absolutely. I think that was a great idea, with having the 2 locations, be able to add it up to more people that wanted to come. Because I had people that reached out to me. I believe you did. I know Stephanie did. Are there still tickets available? They were contemplating doing it because we still did have 2 tickets left available for the Victorian Mansion. And I was telling people, well, there's possibly 2 already taken, so there is no more. Now we'll be able to open those up, and hopefully those people will want to come to this. And that was one concern when I heard the call, that we could happen to cancel this. My first thought was we all have people coming from different places across the country, not just local in New England that was driving in. I know myself, I have a few friends from Atlanta that would flying in. They could cancel and get their money back possibly, but some airlines won't do that. They make you carry it over.
Right. We have somebody coming from California.
We have California, we have Florida, we have Michigan,
Florida,
we have Atlanta.
and Michigan. So that was my main concern, is worried. Not that I wasn't worried about everybody, but I was worried a lot about those people because of the flights. So I was glad that we were able to pull this off and get the new location, and I think it's just going to be an even better night. Now that we've got 2 locations, we can spread out even more, and more people can come and enjoy the night. And
the idea behind having more tickets means that's more money that we can give to the Murdoch Whitney House, to the Winchendon Historical Society for helping us out of this jam. So,
absolutely.
When you come, if you decide to come to the event because you're like, okay, well, I wasn't really doing anything Saturday night. Yeah, sure, I think I might go. Then, you're going to be directly helping them for helping us out in a time of need. And as I mentioned, I've investigated the Murdoch Whitney House a couple of times now, and strange things happen every time we go there. That's the place where Moniz and I had peach pits that were just appearing out of nowhere and hitting us, being thrown at us by something we couldn't see in the basement of that place. And we had an amazing flashlight session in the dining room of that place the last time we were there. And it's such a great, great spot It's been all restored. It looks fantastic. It's like living in a museum, and you get to investigate the whole place. I think it's 4 floors in the Murdoch Whitney house. I think there's 3 floors in the Isaac Morse house. So you have all this space to spread out, and I can tell you, it doesn't matter how many people go to this thing. You're going to feel like you're the only one there sometimes. And
That's awesome.
And even then, it's still going to be intimate.
It's my first time going to that location.
It's a really cool location. I actually, my first time there, I was actually, Tim, the first time that we ever got to investigate the Isaac Morse house. It was finally open, and I was with Tim and Jeff Belanger, and they both said something weird happened in this house. So can you just go in and tell us what room it was and what happened? So I said, okay, yeah, sure. Just kind of giggling at the fact that my friends were testing my psychic abilities. And I went and I walked through the house, and I stopped in one room, and I said, okay, this is where it happened. And Jeff said, yep. Okay, what happened? I said, somebody died in this room. They committed suicide. It was a gunshot wound. And Jeff said, okay, yep, great. Awesome, you got it all right. Now let's go. Let's go check people in.
In the Morse house, yeah.
Yep. So it was very, very interesting.
So, and one of the other advantages, John, you haven't been there, but one of the advantages that you'll be happy to know about as the event coordinator is the Murdoch Whitney house has a parking lot, which is something that we weren't going to have at the S.K. Pierce Mansion. So you will be able to actually park and not have to find a place down the street, and so it'll be a lot easier in that regard. And at the Murdoch Whitney house, we can actually eat pizza inside the house.
Awesome.
So that saves you the trouble of having people walking back and forth across the street.
Yes. No, that definitely sounds a much easier night that will flow when you can have the easier parking, not having to have people walking from down the street and all crossing the street trying to get food. It sounds like a much easier and better location for the night.
So, and now, of course, anybody that wants to get involved with this, I know that we made an event poster for it earlier, Stephanie. Yes, that'll be blasted all over social media.
Correct.
But people can go to the website to purchase the tickets that you set up earlier.
Which is brightstarpromotions.eventbrite.com.
So it's BRITE.
Yes.
So brightstarpromotions.eventbrite.com.
Correct.
So both Brights are BRITE.
Yes.
And of course, we'll share it out on all of our social media, and we'll get the word out there. And if I'm sure there might be some people, John, that come at you and say, I was really counting on going to the Pierce Mansion. I think I'd like to get a refund. So I know that you can work that out if possible, but I'm just telling anybody that's listening, you're not going to be sorry that this got changed to a different location.
I really don't think with the group that we have, because I've talked to Stephanie about it, mentioned it to you. We all know pretty much everybody that's coming, and I think everybody that's coming was excited to go to the mansion, but I think they're just excited to be out ghost hunting and investigating and having a good time with all of us also. So I think no matter where we had it, I think these people would have come because they're going to enjoy their time anyways.
And that's not even to mention the fact that there's 2 very special guests that'll be there that we haven't even mentioned.
Right.
One of whom will be joining us in a bit. That's Porter from Haunted Towns and from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers. And also Shari D. Benedetti from Ghost Hunters will be there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So have you told them yet about the new spot?
No, I have not. I have not told them. Sherry's away down in Atlanta, Georgia at Dragon Con right now, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Porter. I was waiting for a text message from him anyways to talk to about something else, but I'm sure he'll be hearing it shortly if he's not listening already.
Well, I'm sure Stephanie, you probably she set up the interview for tonight, so she's already let him know.
He probably already knows.
Yep.
So it'll be next Saturday night. You can get the tickets. Get them now while you can. It's already up and going, right, Stephanie? Oh, the site's all ready to go.
Everything is set up.
So just go to brightstarpromotions.eventbrite.com to get your tickets. And as I said, we'll share all that out. And I agree. I think that there's a reason this happened. Everything happens for a reason. And I get a feeling we're going to be in for one hell of a spooky night next Saturday.
I do too. I agree with you, Tim. And like I said, I can't thank you enough for being a part of it. Same thing with Stephanie being a part of it, and of course Porter and Sherry. But you guys with helping out as much as you did and stepping up and taking care of it before I even got the phone call, because I was out late fishing and didn't get up till about 11 o'clock in the morning. So I can't thank you guys enough for doing this and helping out, and I think it's going to be an awesome night.
All right. Well, we will see you then and probably talk to you before then.
Yes. All right, you guys enjoy the night. Have a good show, and everybody listening, I hope you have a great night, too.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Take care.
That is John Brightman of Bright Star Promotions, and as we mentioned, the beyond our control. People always say that when stuff goes wrong. They always say, due to circumstances beyond our control. But in this case, it really was beyond our control.
Yeah, there was literally nothing that we could do, and you and I tried.
Sure.
The backstory is I woke up to a message from the mansion, and I was the only one that knew at that time, and I immediately got to work. I recruited Tim to help me. Tim ended up saving the day in the end, but the two of us were working endlessly for hours trying to figure out how we were going to save this event and how we were going to pull it off and make it happen, because Tim and I have been through this a bunch of times before with the town of Gardner. And
that's when you sent me the messages at first, I was like, don't worry about it.
Exactly.
This happens every time. It's going to work out. We'll figure it out. And I told you, I said, I'm not psychic. I don't have abilities or sensitivities, but I have a feeling it's all going to work out. And I was right. It did work out, just not the way that I thought that it would.
And I mean, I'm disappointed to not be going to the S.K. Pierce Mansion because I was looking forward to it. However, I haven't been to Winchendon in a couple of years. So
do we chalk this up at all to the ongoing battle that we've had with whatever is at the S.K. Pierce Mansion?
Of course we do.
I'm talking beyond the city of Gardner. I'm talking beyond the human element. You're talking
about the supernatural.
There's something there that has been working against us.
And does not like us to arrive at that house. But once we were there, it doesn't like us to leave either.
Right. So
in a creepy way, not in a good way.
I think that might have had some influence.
Oh, I absolutely think so.
And I hate to be the guy that says, oh, it's the paranormal things that are affecting things, but I think that in this case, that definitely plays part of it.
I agree with you, and you were that guy that didn't want anything to do with blaming it on stuff like that. You would kind of just brush it off and not say much, but I don't know. There's been some weird things that have happened. Especially
when I've found a way around all the other things that have happened, but now there's just an inexplicable brick wall here.
Right.
It'd be one thing if they could give us an actual rationale and reasoning why.
Right.
But I talked to the owner yesterday for about 20 minutes, and even he said, I really don't understand it. I have no explanation why. I'm waiting to get an explanation why. But here it is, a holiday weekend, so they find out on Friday of the holiday weekend that the event can't take place there. So now we're not going to get an answer from anybody until at least Tuesday. And they're probably thinking that if it gets to that point, because you're a week out, they'll probably just cancel the event. So we won't even have to get into that stuff with them. But, we found a way around it. We found a way to pull out what will be an even better location, I think.
I think so too. I agree. I can't wait to, because the two locations are literally across the side street from each other. So it's a very easy walk. It's such a beautiful place too.
Oh, it is.
It's
perfect small town, New England.
It is.
It's so scenic. When you get, even the ride there is like just driving through a crossword puzzle. Well, not a crossword puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. And if you drove through a crossword puzzle, you'd be really screwed.
How do you drive through a crossword puzzle?
But it's it's like this very scenic, picturesque location.
Right.
These two great mansions across the street from each other. They've done such a great job in restoring them. And the money that you are paying for your ticket, part of that is going toward helping with that continued restoration. So, when you go to these places, you say, I've given a piece to what they're doing here. So absolutely. And bring a few extra dollars when you come next Saturday night, because the Murdoch Whitney House actually has a little gift shop inside of the building where they have some really unique, like Victorian era stuff that you're going to want to bring something home. So bring a little bit of extra money if you like to collect those kind of things. And you have something else coming up as well before we get into things with Porter too, right? You have some other things on the docket. I
have a lot of things coming up. I'm waiting to hear back from one right now, but I will be in Sleepy Hollow, New York, on the when is it? October 21st and 22nd for the Festival of Witches, and I'm really excited for that because I've never been, and it's right before Halloween. Then the weekend after, I will be at Alamo City Comic-Con Halloween Edition in San Antonio, Texas, and then I am traveling to Columbia, Tennessee for Spirits of the South, which is put on with our amazing friend Christy Parrish, who is trying to help raise money for some locations down in Tennessee that really desperately need it. So I will be there along with Porter. Actually, I'll be in Texas with Porter as well. And then after that, I am finally doing my first public gallery reading back in this area with Dustin Perry. So the weekend of November 18th, I will be at the Mayflower Lodge in Middleborough, Mass. Which is
the Masonic Lodge, for those who don't know.
Yes, it is. And I will finally be coming out of retirement locally.
And that's one of those locations, too, that you hear a lot about the paranormal activity that goes on there. So good luck with that, trying to read people in the gallery while there's all those other... You're going to have like a line out the door looking to talk to you. And I'm not even talking about the living people.
No, I know. So it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird getting back into it. But I'm actually doing a gallery reading down in San Antonio, Texas, too. So it's time. But I am excited. So tickets... I mean, you can go everywhere to get different tickets for all those things, but the tickets for Dustin and I will be at...
well, I mean, everything's on your site, too, right?
StephBark.com.
So that's just direct everybody to that one spot, and they'll find it from there.
And
we're working on some other things, too. I don't know how much of it's going to sync up with your schedule. There might be some that you are at, some that you're not at. I don't even know anything about dates right now, but we're working on a few things coming up for October and maybe even into November for stuff going on here, because we've been trying to put on some different stuff, because this is the time people say, oh, well, this is your time of year to make money, right? Because you're in the paranormal stuff. This is the time of year where you can make money. No, this is the time of year when we can get people to come in and make money for these locations. Nobody wants to go to some of these places in July or August when they can go take a $5 walking tour, but they want to go and they want to buy that ghost hunting ticket in October because they're looking for some spooky fun and something to do. So that's why we're trying to get as much stuff as we can. So if you start seeing a bunch of stuff getting blasted at you for different events, that's the reason why, because this is kind of like our chance to, and our time of year to help these places out. And as you can tell, some of them need it. We talk all the time about the places that this is pretty much their biggest tourism arm now is through ghost stuff. So, we want to help them out where we can, and then hopefully that has a trickle-down effect that gets people to start showing up for the $5 walking tours during the summer.
I hope that I'm here for what we're planning, because I already kind of have an idea. So,
well, there's one that's probably going to happen sometime in October that you might miss out on. But sorry, it's just when they're available. And plus,
I have 1 week in October left.
Geographically, I start to get worried past certain times of the year.
I
start to say, oh no, that's too far north to go in the first week of November. It might snow. So
hey, it snows.
You know how I feel about snow.
Here, pretty much.
Well, let's bring on a guy now who doesn't have to worry about snow.
Unless he travels to Salem in April.
Which I swore that wouldn't happen, but it happened anyway.
It did.
Joining us on the line right now, we have Porter from Haunted Towns. Porter, are you with us?
Hey, yeah, I'm right here, Tim. How's it going, man?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm a little bit more awake than the last time I think we spoke.
Well, listen, I can only promise to try not to put you to sleep, but sometimes it happens.
No guarantee it
You won't be the
every
first
week.
guest that nodded off on me.
I've got the time zone thing down now, I think. It took me a little bit to get it straight.
Well, we were just talking with John Brightman about how we had to change the event location for next Saturday night, and I know that you were excited to come up for the S.K. Pierce Mansion, but now we're going to have two great locations right across the street from each other, two huge mansion houses, and one of which has an ice cream shop in it. So that's the goal next Saturday, is to get there early enough to make sure that we can have ice cream before the event.
I mean, who does not want to go on a ghost hunt in an ice cream shop? I mean, it's like the perfect mix of everything.
Well, listen, I didn't get to actually go out in the field that much with you guys as you were filming the season of Haunted Towns. But was it the episode that we just watched, the Savannah episode? Was that the one where you guys got the free ice cream?
Ooh, let's see. Was it Savannah? No, it was McDonough, Georgia. I think we got the ice cream. That one. Oh yeah, that was a good pile of ice cream. I got no lie to tell. That stuff was nice. It was hot that day.
Yeah, you guys were eating it out of like those 3-gallon containers. Like I was like, what?
Oh no, wait a minute. Yeah, that was Savannah where we got the 3-gallon container of ice cream. We had 2 ice cream episodes this season. 2
ice cream and neither one of them were in New England where I was. That figures.
No, man. You guys. There was nobody up there that gave us ice cream. It was all in the South. I think they were trying to fatten us up, like pigs. So it was okay though. It was good ice cream.
You know what's funny is when you guys were up in Salem and there was that cemetery where you filmed with Sam and there was all that nice background of the snow and everything. That actually, there's an ice cream place there that's like in charge of running that cemetery.
Oh,
and,
yeah, really?
And I was hoping I could get there just because I'd heard that the ice cream was so good. I was like, yeah, it'd be nice to see everybody and help with filming, but really, I just want to go for ice cream.
How did I miss ice cream at a cemetery? How did I do that?
That's
I don't know.
weird.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, something was not working in my favor.
Stephanie and I are like the hounds for ice cream. Like we find it no matter where it is. Like we went and filmed at a haunted library right next door. Ice cream.
Yep.
Like literally in the parking lot. So all we did, we were filming a sizzle reel, and we took off to get ice cream.
Right. We're like, yep. It was with Chris Jericho.
With Chris Jericho.
We're like, hey, Chris, it's nice to meet you, but we got to go get some ice cream.
We
man.
don't really care. We're just gonna eat.
You guys keep doing what you're doing. We're gonna go get some sundaes.
That was the time that we sat on that bench eating the ice cream by ourselves, and we ended up with all those weird inchworms all over us.
Right.
Those are
and
awful.
Talking to the people about how the ice cream shop is haunted.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We did. Because the library was haunted. So
right.
Of course the ice cream shop was haunted.
It had to spill over. It had to.
Well, and that's what's so great about haunted towns is that you guys are getting to these places where it's little out of the way places or maybe like on the town square, places that you never would look at a place and say, oh, I bet you that place is haunted. But yet you find out that it has this amazing activity going on, and it's a piece of a bigger puzzle for the entire town.
That's the whole thing about it. We tend to think about haunted locations as being confined to one specific building or one specific area. And in haunted towns, what we've done is we kind of, like you said, we branched out. We look at the story, and we look for connections between different locations, and then we try to dig into those and see if we can make that connection through the spirit world too, and substantiate it through the evidence that there's a definite spirit connection between one location and the other, or maybe 3 or 4 locations.
And when I find myself going into a place for the first time, going to a town, maybe it's my first time visiting there, maybe I'm just passing through. I do a lot of yard sailing, so I end up down these out of the way places. And as I'm doing all that, the conversation that I have with everybody inevitably turns to places that are haunted, and you can't go anywhere with there at least being 1 or 2 or 3 stories like that in every town in America.
Oh my God, yeah, that's the key. Everyone, excuse me, I'm clearing my throat. I just drove through a crossword puzzle and had me a smoothie. But no, that's the thing about it. Everybody, who you talk to, they have a story about something that they can't explain. So there's everybody has a ghost story. But I think the neatest thing is when you talk to people who have no connection to one another and maybe know nothing about the stories of each location, but yet they're having similar activity or seeing similar entities. And so then you start digging into the history to try to see what the connection was. And sometimes that connection is very small, and sometimes it's huge. Just like our episode in McDonough, Georgia. The train crash down there was huge, and it connected a lot of places.
And when you do have these common threads, though, you've been investigating for a long time, so you know that this can be the trap that happens, is you start looking at some of this backstory, and you start thinking that you start expecting that all the stuff that you find will fit into that narrative some way or another, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But the stuff that you guys have found, at least through these first 3 episodes, has been amazing because it is directly related to that narrative. It's not like I'm hearing it and saying, well, yeah, I can see where they think that, but it could also be this. You're getting direct names and direct facts based on these stories coming through in the evidence that you're collecting.
Yeah, I think that's the neatest thing. I think one of my favorite was in Gettysburg up there. That and Salem, both of those were wonderful episodes. But Gettysburg, when we were doing the investigation and that EVP came through that said Abraham Lincoln, that was kind of unexpected. It was totally unexpected. We were getting some activity, had some good interaction all night. And then to get that type of intellectual interaction in a location that is so connected to such a prominent figure in American history, not to mention that right above us where we got that EVP. Now this is something that they didn't show in the show, but hanging on the wall right above where we were at when we got that EVP was a framed picture or a shadow box, if you will, and in that shadow box there was a lock of Abraham Lincoln's hair and a document that he had signed in his Secretary of War. There was also a photograph of him, And then there was a stack of documentation from the National Archives and some other entities that had verified that was his hair. So there was a direct piece of him right above us. Not to mention, the fact that he had stayed right across the street before he delivered the Gettysburg Address. So I mean, everything there is very familiar with that name, and for the way that worked out, when I asked the question of who was the person that stayed in the building across the way that addressed the country after the war, and to get his name, not just Lincoln, but when you listen to it really closely, you can hear Abraham Lincoln. It amazed us. But it kind of brings all the story together, how it connects everything in that location.
And what I like about it too is, and again, this is kind of the format of the show more than anything else, is, with Haunted Towns now, we get to see you guys as you really are on an investigation, instead of a particular aesthetic maybe that was being put forth with Ghost Asylum, where when you're investigating these places that have this dark, deep history, and it's one location, and you're spending that, like, that has an effect on you, and has an effect on your personality and how you're acting in that night and in that investigation. But with Haunted Towns, you can tell that, because I think of the nature of going in so many different directions when you're in a town, I think it's more like your natural personalities are shining through, and you can see that excitement on everybody's face when something comes through and everybody hears it right away and knows exactly what was said.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the unique things that how we went with Haunted Towns. We wanted to showcase more of who we are. It's you go and you do these investigations, and I think that the average viewer thinks that we walk into a building, we go in, we sit down with a few pieces of equipment, we say, hey, can you talk to us? And the spirits talk to us, and then we just go through for 42 minutes, and then we're like, okay, we're done, we're going home. But we're actually in this, on location or in these towns for 4 or 5 days investigating. So there's all this time that we're there, that we're either waiting or we're not getting the interaction that we hope for, because the spirits don't talk to us on demand. They're kind of on their own time frame. But it takes a while sometimes to get that evidence to come through. But in the meantime, you're not stuck in one location. You're not beating the walls to death and just getting frustrated and that's not tearing you down. It's kind of like you're exploring. You're out there looking for new locations. You're looking at new areas that offer something new. I think I can say new 5 or 6 times in the same sentence. But it's something different, so it brings about a little bit of a different feel for the investigators. It's you're on a path of discovery, not just spiritual there, but you never know what you're going to run across. I mean, we find some artifacts, and for me that's very interesting because I love history. Just like when I came across Lincoln's hair there at the Mason-Dixon Militaria in Gettysburg. And then also came across a pair of Elvis's underwear. So what a crazy piece of American history, right?
Whoa! That's well, I got to ask you now. Did you try them on?
Well, I did not try them on. I was kind of afraid to touch them. They looked a little stained.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not surprised. But I was talking about Elvis I used to do a Saturday morning talk show, and on I think it was Elvis's. It was either the anniversary of his death or his birthday. I did the whole show on Elvis, and a guy calls up and says, hey, I got something that you might want to see. I'm going to come down to the station. And I was like, okay, whatever. And he shows up at the door, and I let him in, and he has this shopping bag. And he opens up the shopping bag, and inside of it, wrapped up in tissue paper, is a scarf. And he pulls out the scarf, and he says, this was Elvis's actual scarf. My wife caught it at one of his concerts in Las Vegas in 1970, whatever, and she passed away, but I've held on to it, and I just thought you might want to see it. And I looked at it, and I said, can I put it on? He says, absolutely. And he puts it on over my neck, and I was like, oh, my God, I'm wearing a scarf that Elvis Presley wore. And it was a total geek out moment for me.
I think that may be the first time I heard that story.
Really? I tell it all the time.
You are wearing a scarf that had so much of Elvis's sweat on it. You now have part of Elvis's DNA on your body.
That's why I'm the king, baby.
Oh
you are, baby. You're the king.
I would have totally put on the underwear too. I would have walked around being like, "Hey, who wants to love me tender?"
You definitely would have.
Of course, I would have. But like you said, you never know in these little nooks and crannies and corners of America. And, I know that when you look at some of these towns, you've heard of Savannah before, and you've heard of Salem, and you know that these are kind of famously haunted places. But when you're watching this show, you're looking at them from the perspective of, hey, this is just a typical American town, and you're really getting to see kind of that small town atmosphere of these places. So it's like, we talked about it before you guys were heading out on the road to go to these places, that sometimes it's not about the big famous haunted places that you've seen on TV before, or the places that you would expect people to go to. Sometimes you can find the story and the connections in those littler places that people don't know about.
Absolutely. It's kind of like when you look at history. You look at history books and you read that bit of history that's out there that's for everyone to consume and digest. But the real history is sometimes a little bit deeper and more hidden and harder to get a hold to. It lies in the stories that have been handed down throughout time. And I know you as a researcher, Tim, you understand that you've got to dig and find and try to track down these stories. And they may be listed in some of the most obscure places, and then try to verify them, because sometimes just like history, it's from one person's perspective, and so it may be what their opinion was, and so you have to kind of distill those opinions to try to find out where the truth is. And once you start digging, you find these stories that really stand out, and there's little jewels or little Easter eggs in there that kind of make those connections. And when you can start finding those Easter eggs and making those connections, that's where you get a hold of the real history. And that path will take you into some of those more obscure places, just like what we do on Haunted Towns. And it allows us to take the viewer on that journey and show them places and parts of the locations that they may not have ever gotten to experience just by going on a normal tour or a normal visit.
And the other good thing about it too is that you're able to kind of tell pieces of the story instead of having to tell the entire story. So if a paranormal show went to Salem before, they might be talking about the entire scope of the Salem witch trials and what it meant and how it's had this impact on the town. But you guys were able to actually go and focus on, the story of one person that was accused and well, two people actually, but you're able to focus on just kind of that and tell that story. And even if you don't get to tell the story of every person that was wrongfully accused, you've now humanized that story for people and humanized that piece of history to let them know, hey, this was a real person just like you or I, and this kind of thing could happen to anybody.
Oh, absolutely. That's, it was so cool for me when getting to Salem, because, going to school when you're a child and you're reading about American history and you're reading about Salem and Salem witch trials in the history books, you have this vision, so to speak, in your mind. If you haven't seen pictures or you haven't, of course, when I was going to school at that time, I'm a little bit older, so you had pictures and books. You didn't have the internet, so you have this idea of what you're looking at or what you're looking for, and then when you actually you get there and you're experiencing it and digging into that story and finding out what these people, what their daily life was like, what prompted this to happen, what was the mentality of the community at the time, because you can take it and put it together, and you think about it, that we as people throughout time, we used sorcery or religion or mysticism or something. We used these mystic ideas to explain things that we didn't understand, and so in some cases, just like with Salem, they utilize that to their benefit to accomplish an underlying goal, so to speak, to try to get people out of the way that they didn't like. And when you start digging into the stories and you start reading that and looking at it from that perspective and not taking it for face value, you really dig in and you really start getting a picture of what life was really like for the people back in that time period, in those areas.
And what is even better about that is that when you're going to these, I think this is a trait that the TWC has that I think a lot of paranormal investigators kind of lack, but you're able to look at these places that you're at kind of in multi-dimensional space and time. So, you never lose sight of the fact that, okay, you may be standing in a 2016-17 Militaria, a 2017, glass art gallery, but you're able to kind of remember where you're also standing. Like, okay, I'm also standing on a spot that was this. I'm also standing on a spot that was essentially a cemetery. So you're able to kind of think in multiple linear dimensions to be able to reach back and find things. Whereas a lot of people would say, oh, well, I don't see the point of going to investigate an art gallery. How can that be haunted? Mm-hmm. But you're coming into these towns almost like, let's take this time period into account as much as we are what we're experiencing now.
Oh, absolutely, yes. That's one of the things that I've always personally I've always done. I've always been, well, I haven't always, but I've been a history buff for a long time, and started digging into history. My family's history, and one of the things that really made me start to think like that is I went back and visited a farm that was a Revolutionary War land grant to my great grandfather to the fifth or sixth, and got there and I'm looking, and of course we drove there in vehicles, and you pull up in the driveway, you get out of the air conditioned car, and it's hot in the summer down here in the South in Tennessee, and I'm standing there and I'm looking and I'm thinking, wow, these hills and these mountains around here, these guys came in here with horses and carriages, horses and wagons, mules and wagons. And when they came into these areas, it was the wild frontier, and so it's kind of like you put yourself back in that time period and really take on the idea, the feel. So just like going into those places like the Glass Gallery or the Wright Square Cafe, you're standing there, and yes, it's a cafe. It's a glass gallery. It's a relic store. It's a modern day restaurant or whatever. But when you stand there and you're looking around the room and you think that the walls were here, this is the building that was here. The inside of it, the appearance of it may be a little different, but this building was here. And what was it like on that day? You think about like going back to Gettysburg. What was it like that day when people were in these buildings and they could hear the cannon fire and the Parrott shells flying down the street, and the people, just in pain and agony, and how awful and brutal it must have been for the few inhabitants there to have, over 100,000 people, 150,000 people, soldiers descend on a location that had 2,000 population. And to try to put yourself there is difficult, but if you can get there, it really brings on a different feel for the location, and it kind of connects you to it.
And I know that you guys are doing Facebook Live during the shows as they air on Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock on Destination America, but I've been on Twitter, and I've been trying to see what people are saying on Twitter during the show as it airs, and I got to tell you, overwhelmingly, the response that people have been talking about is how much is dedicated to history. And it's not it's almost like, all right, if we can go out and we can find some ghosts, that's great, but that's almost ancillary to the fact that we're trying to present to you this historical story and this little bit of history that you might not know, or you might think that you know, but you don't know the whole story. And so in a way, it's just as much educational as it is entertainment for the people that are watching.
Oh, yes. And it's, you get that piece of history, and I kind of think it, for some people, what it may do is spark their interest for them to dig deeper. Maybe in their hometown, their location, or somewhere that they find that they have a very unique interest in. Maybe that will make them think that, oh, wow, maybe I'm not getting the whole story. Maybe I need to dig a little deep. Maybe I need to dig a little deeper, do a little more research, and put myself into that place, and really get down to the feel of what it was like back then, and then make them maybe want to go and visit some of these locations and some of these towns where we're going to, and feel that and experience that for themselves, and dig into that history, because just because we've been digging into it, or just because the writers of the textbooks and these historians have dug into the history, it doesn't mean that they've included every single bit of interesting facts that you could discover just by going out and talking to people who've lived there, get the stories that have been handed down over the years. I mean, those are the things that sometimes they just don't make it in the book, but gosh, they're so important to have because they can be the key that puts the whole puzzle together.
I also think too, though, that as people are, because I've seen the way that some of these towns react to some of these ghost stories. I've seen the way that some locations that you hear are haunted and you say, well, can we go and check them out? And people say, oh, no, I don't really think so. We don't really like to spread that story around. But you guys are getting into places that normally people would get turned away from. I mean, the Oglethorpe, 12 Oglethorpe in Savannah, Georgia, is a place that people have been trying to get into for years. It's on every tour. They drive by every tour and talk about what happened there and about how it's one of the most haunted places. And then you try and get in and you can't. But you guys were able to get in there and be the first people to ever investigate there.
Yeah, that was an amazing feat, and they were very, very accommodating and helped us out a lot. It was so cool because we were talking to one of the owners in there, and we were kind of doing some preliminary work, and then we brought Alex in, and we were going to film a scene, and that scene wasn't in the show at first, but it's such a pivotal scene because we're sitting there, we're filming, and the owner had told us that people have these random things that'll happen, like their batteries will go dead, their cameras will quit working or whatever. And so we're just cruising along. Everything's going good. Of course, Alex has got this camera on his shoulder, and I'm not talking about something you buy at Walmart. I'm talking, this is
Right.
This is a $100,000 camera, and so he's sitting there with that thing on his shoulder, and all of a sudden it just dies. And of course, the first thing that we do is, Chris and I both, we pull out our cell phones and we're filming Alex. We're like, okay, Alex, what's going on here? So some of that footage you see in the show of Alex working on the camera that was on the fly, filmed with our cell phones, trying to find out what was going on, because we knew that was a very important piece that would have to be shown because it coincided with the stories that we were getting. And I'm so glad that it made it in the show. Because that's another thing that you face with the show is that you may have a lot of different things that happen that you just don't have time for. Like
Right.
I said, we're there 4 or 5 days. We've got 47 minutes in there to deliver the story, and so there's a lot of bonus footage out there that the audience is yet to see, and I'm looking forward to someday when they do get to see it.
Well, what was really interesting about that part with Alex is that people don't realize this. Alex has a lot of experience filming in haunted locations. He worked on Ghost Hunters, and he has experience going into these places. He knows what to expect. So this is a guy who knows how to prevent these kind of things from happening, and yet still the activity is so strong it happens anyway.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's really cool to talk to Alex because he doesn't get spooked very often. But it's pretty neat when something happens and it's a very obvious supernatural encounter. Alex's eyes will get real big and he'll cut his eyes at you like, is this really happening right now? And you kind of get to see a piece of that in that little snippet of film. But yeah, Alex is always prepared. And that day he just kind of threw his hands up and says, I don't know what's going on, but let's get another battery, see if we can fix it.
And Stephanie, I know that you don't watch a lot of paranormal shows.
I don't.
But you've been watching Haunted Towns.
I have been.
It's just because of you, Porter. It's not because I worked on it.
Oh my God.
Oh, I'm so honored.
How many episodes of Ghost Stalkers did you see?
I actually watched Ghost Stalkers.
I'm just messing with you.
Maybe the first 3 or 4 definitely I watched.
But you're just as much of a history nerd as Porter and I are. So
such a history nerd.
I mean, that has to be drawing you into these episodes more than anything.
Well, I mean, definitely. Obviously, I don't even know if we've talked about it on the show, but when you first signed on to write for Haunted Towns, I came here to the studio and said, "Hey, look, here's my packet. This is what we're doing." And
I didn't show you that.
No, you didn't. So I was just sitting there reading nothing about how great this new show was going to be, and I said the first thing I said to you was the history is going to be amazing. That's
Right.
the first thing that drew me in was the history was going to be awesome, and I, at that time, knew nothing about who TWC was, who Porter was. I couldn't tell you what he looked like to save my life. And I mean, even going with you to the set of filming, I had no idea what they all looked like.
Who's this one? Who's that?
One? Yeah. I have no idea what's going on. I don't watch paranormal TV. I don't watch horror TV. I don't watch any of that stuff. So I definitely actually watched the first Gettysburg episode on the app when it released, and I actually called Porter right after I watched it and said, did that actually happen? Because we all know how TV can be at times, and working in TV myself, I know, like, I worked on a very authentic show, but I don't know about other shows. And I called him like, did that EVP actually happen? Did that happen at the same time? And I'm asking all these questions, really interested and into it. And I'm like, wow, I'm so dorky. I can't believe that I really just got into a paranormal TV show. But I really enjoyed it. And I watched the follow-up to Salem, and it was really cool to see them go to places that I have not been, or places that I have been that I've had personal experiences in as well. So I give it a thumbs up. And I don't do that often.
But one of the points that you're making there, though, is that a lot of people will look at stuff that happens in a show, Porter, and you know this. You've been on TV long enough to know that people look at stuff and say, oh, well, gee, that just seems too convenient that happened, or that they got that come through that, and that this happened and that happened. But when I look at shows, the first thing that I notice is the way that people are reacting to the stuff. So I'm like, well, if they're reacting that strongly to it saying Abraham Lincoln, then it said Abraham Lincoln. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh yeah. That EVP actually startled the bejesus out of us, because we were, Chris and I were standing there, and of course Doogie and Brandon, and when Doogie played that back and we heard it, we were like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But then I think Brandon got so excited and was so loud that scared Chris and I even more, and so we had this moment of embrace. And then we looked at Brandon like, don't yell so doggone loud, But I mean, all of that was authentic. I mean, it was in the moment, and I mean, even those people that were outside listening in. We had Mike out there in the van, and he was monitoring surveillance, and he had, he was able to listen to us. We had the owners of the Mason-Dixon military were actually out there where Mike was at. And they all heard it, even through their audio. It came through when we played it. So I mean, it was such a prominent EVP, Class A. I mean, it's one of those things that just it jumps out at you, and there's no way to get around it. I can't say enough about that. But that's one of the things about the show, is that we want to take the audience with us and have them experience what we experience. And no matter how big or how small that is, or if it's something natural, if you're sitting there and you think you've had something touch your hand and it's a bug, or you hear something fall over and it turns out to be something that's natural, or something bumping, walking down the hall, and it turns out to be something rolling down the hall, whatever the case may be. We want to take the audience on that journey with us and feel those highs and lows, like, oh my gosh, something's actually happening. And then when you come down because you find out it was something natural, but then also, like do a little education along the way and kind of help people, find out little tidbits about the locations where we're going, the history of them.
And I do love that you see, Brandon get so excited, and you do see everybody get so fired up for things, because I think on Ghost Asylum, a lot of that was you guys were kind of playing it cool, trying to, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, it's a different feel when you're in this big haunted asylum or prison or hospital or something, and it can feel very unwelcoming. But I think the reactions that have been the most, I don't know, kind of have me the most on the edge of my seat have been what's been happening to Doogie, because it just seems like he's getting targeted more in these places than he ever was, dealing with some of the nasty stuff that you guys were going up against in other places.
Oh yeah, I mean the dude, he is the target. I mean, he's what we call the paranormal magnet. And I can't tell you how many times we've turned him loose in a building. We just watch him and wait and see what happens. I don't know what it is, but that guy, I mean, if there's something spooky around, it's going to find the Doog, and it's going to latch onto him. I think they're kind of a little sweet on the Doog. I'm not sure, what's going on there, but it seems like everywhere he goes, man, he's got something going on. And I mean, there's been times when we've done investigations even before TV, and we would put a camera on him, just watching him, and we've seen stuff pull at his coat and just all kinds of craziness. And so I think he's got a special connection to the other side.
Well, he's got psychic elbows, right? Is that what he told me when he first met me?
That's right. Psychic elbows. They get cool.
Well, and what I like about this season is as it goes along, little inside info that we know is that, we'll see you guys go to places where that side of him can kind of come out even more. So places where he can kind of develop that ability a little bit more.
Yes. We tried to turn him loose and see if he would just see how far it would go. And who knows? You're going to get to see some of that in the show. You're going to get to see that fun side of it too. And you never know what's going to happen, especially on this show, because we've got some great locations coming up as we go through the rest of the season. And some very interesting places, and you'll see a lot of locations and parts of these places that you would never get to visit without watching the show.
And the Spooky South Coast audience may see a familiar face coming up on one of the episodes. Somebody who actually got to take part in the filming with you guys. And, of course, I'm talking about Claire the doll, who you thought I was going to say me, didn't you, Stephanie? But she's like, he's really going to put himself over right now. But no.
I did think so. I thought so, for sure.
I could tell by your face. You're like, shut up, Tim.
I would never tell you to shut up. Never,
you're just in the truck for a couple of minutes. Jeez. But Claire the doll, who actually had spent time in my home, our friend Jill actually mailed her up to me, and she stayed with me in my house while I was.
Whoa! Is this okay to talk about on the radio station?
No, I didn't do that. I didn't do anything like that with the doll. It wasn't that kind of doll. It's porcelain, not inflatable.
Oh my God!
But, it's a family show, right?
Well, no, we're on YouTube.
Yeah, we can say whatever we want now. But
that's true.
I was writing a book on haunted objects, and Jill said, I have a doll that's haunted that I grew up with, and she told me the story, and I actually made her dig the doll out, and she sent it up to me, and the doll stayed with me for a couple of months while I was writing the book, and then I gave it back to her, ironically at the Lizzie Borden house.
Right.
And so when we were looking for towns, and I started to see, she actually mentioned to me about the Camp Creek wreck and McDonough and all that stuff, and I started to look into that, and I said, well, that definitely fits in with the story behind the doll. So there's actually been people who have said to me online, hey, you know that doll that they show on Haunted Towns every week? Is that the one that you had on Spooky South Coast? Because we do have an episode where Claire was actually sitting in as one of our guests.
So creepy.
And I said, believe it or not, that is the same doll. And she's already kind of developed her own little following that I'm sure will only go through the roof after the episode airs in McDonough. But is that the first time that you've ever had to investigate alongside of a doll?
I think that we've done some private investigations before where the people were doll collectors. So going into a room full of dolls is kind of unnerving, to say the least. I don't like clowns and I don't like dolls, period.
Me too.
But I think that's why Stephanie and I get along so well. It's because there's so many similarities as to what we don't like. It's like I don't like clowns, I don't like dolls, and she's like, "Oh, they're me too." But this is the first time I think that we've actually done an investigation around a specific doll. So that was pretty unique. We tried to watch see what was going on with the doll, but we never really got a whole lot there. But there was some activity in that house for sure.
Well, this leads up to something that I'm going to spring on you guys for next Saturday night. The Murdoch Whitney house has an entire room of nothing but dolls. And I'm pretty sure that at least a couple of them are actually clown dolls, too.
So
great.
I'm not going in that room at all.
It's one of the most active rooms in the house.
I will not be there.
I don't know.
We're going to have to draw straws.
I say we lock her in there for a little while on her own.
Why would you do that to me? Why do I automatically become the guinea pig?
Why not?
Just because I'm the smallest one doesn't mean that I get bullied.
Why not? Actually, I think Sherry's a little smaller than you.
Oh, that's right.
I say we throw Sherry in there and lock her in.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
There you go.
Perfect.
Now we're all on the same page.
She's not here to defend herself.
Nope.
Let's just throw her in there.
She'll do it anyway. Good. She'll be fine with it. She won't care.
I actually don't even think I've ever even been in the Murdoch Whitney. I think I've only been in Isaac Morse.
Well, you must have been in the Murdoch Whitney house to eat.
Just to walk in. That's it.
That's where we did most of the stuff.
So I didn't know that there was clown dolls.
Oh yeah.
Ugh.
We'll get into all that next Saturday for sure. But you had mentioned, Porter, about when you guys would investigate even before TV. Kind of talk us through a little bit of the genesis of the TWC, because I think people remember Chris from being part of Ghost Hunters Academy, but then there's a period of time where people weren't really sure what he was up to, and then we see Ghostland, Tennessee, and then of course Ghost Asylum after that. What was kind of the genesis of how this group came together?
Well, I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, because it's kind of a long, drawn-out story. But when Chris went to Ghost Hunters Academy and they asked him back for another season, he decided that he wanted to stay back home and try to put together his own team. And I think the way that he explains it is that he was looking around at other teams to join, but couldn't find anybody that kind of fit the MO of what his line of thinking was. And so he decided to kind of pull together some guys that he worked with and start up a group. And so, what's the first thing you do is you come up with a cool name. And so they came up with the name Tennessee Wraith Chasers, or TWC. And so they started doing investigations, and as any young team does, you go out and you try to find locations you can investigate. And in some cases, they don't get permission. They trespass and do things the way they shouldn't do. I don't recommend or condone that. So, if you're listening out there and you're thinking about starting doing this, don't do that. But in the process, he met up with Doogie, and of course, Doogie and Chris go back a long way. They were old workout buddies too, and I think Chris was at the hospital one day, ran into Doog, and they were talking about it. And so Doogie got involved. And then Doogie, he was talking to me one day and told me about it and got me involved. And of course, Brandon came along in there in the middle of all that somewhere. But Doogie kind of brought to the team that reaching out to clients and kind of legitimizing the investigation side of it. I started looking at the business aspect of it and trying to put it together so that it was an entity unto its own. That we could work with and kind of make this thing as legitimate as we possibly could. And then, as we moved on down the road, we added Chasey Ray. He came to one of our events and had been a buddy of ours for a long time. I think I probably corrupted Chasey more than anybody, because he used to run around town with me when he was a teenager, probably when he shouldn't have been. Anyway, I won't get into that. That's another show on itself. But,
the statute of limitations hasn't run out on everything, so.
Not on everything, so we won't tell those stories. But so Chasey came around, and he was like, man, he said, I want to get into this and do this for you guys. So Chasey was the right fit for us, and had some long history. He was a brother, so it was just natural to add him. And then of course, as we got into, we were investigating and growing the team, growing our client base, and we're doing a lot of investigations. And then one day we got a phone call to be on a little show called Paranormal Challenge with Zach Bagans on Travel Channel. And so we went and finally agreed to do that show. Did that, and we thought that would be our one moment of fame, because as every ghost hunter, I'll call them ghost hunters, paranormal investigator, growing up, or over the years, you watch other shows, and, you watch Ghost Hunters, you watch, Ghost Adventures, you watch all these shows, and you thought, man, it'd be so cool to do that one day. And, so, when we got to do that, we thought that would be our moment of fame, and we'd kind of, slink back into the shadows and do our thing. And then, one day out of the blue, we get an email from a production company. Got a phone call from them. We thought it was just we thought it was spam. So it's kind of just luckily it worked out that we actually answered them. But Tremendous called us and talked to us about doing a show with them. Asked us if we'd ever thought about doing having our own TV show, and of course we're like, yeah, absolutely, we thought about it. It'd be great. And they said, well, you want to try it? And so that's how we came to have Ghostland, Tennessee, which aired on Animal Planet. And so the Animal Planet just didn't feel like it was the right fit. Paranormal wasn't the right fit for them. So Destination America came in and picked it up, aired the show, liked it. Then we developed Ghost Asylum, and then now here we are with Haunted Towns. We're, I think, counting the live show and the pilot episode and all that stuff, I think we're 40 episodes in now. So it's been a good long run already.
Well, it's interesting too when you look back at some of the things that have kind of evolved over the last, what was it, 2004 when Ghost Hunters hit. So in that time period, we've seen the evolution of what they're looking for in paranormal TV. And you guys have been lucky in the way that you've been able to still produce television shows without having to kind of compromise the way that you want to investigate. And I know that that's something that's very important to you guys, is to keep your methodology and your approach and certainly your beliefs remain part of the show. So that just goes to show that, you're able to keep things authentic the way that you want to do them. And it's almost like the cameras just happen to be there while you're doing your thing, as opposed to doing your thing for the cameras.
Yeah, I think that's the key. It's like when you see us on TV, you're seeing us just like we would be if the cameras weren't there. Well, maybe a little cleaner, but it's that was the thing. When we did the show, we wanted to. We talked to the production company, talked to Tremendous. We talked to the networks, and we. The whole concept was we wanted to bring people along for the ride. We told. I remember the very first vice president of development that we worked with there at Tremendous. He was really trying to push us to do something different, something that was his idea. And I can remember pulling him aside and telling him that, if you'll just chill out and relax and watch us, you will get your TV show. And you will get what you need, but you've got to give us time, because you're going to see our personalities come through. We're going to get evidence. I mean, it's going to happen eventually. I can't guarantee it's going to happen within your 12-hour time slot before you have to start paying overtime to cameramen.
Right.
But you're going to get your evidence. And so finally, I think they saw that and got some great evidence and thought, okay, well, maybe this will work out. So, I think the audience likes it. I think the audience likes the authenticity of it. We are who we are, and you get what you get when what you see, you get what you see. That's one thing about us. We're plain folks, and I tell everybody all the time, the only difference between me and somebody else out here who's working a job is that you can watch me do my job on TV. That's really the only difference.
And I can say too that the fan base that you guys have built up is phenomenal. I mean, they're a great group of people. They're very supportive of everything. A lot of people who could have said, well, gee, I liked Ghost Asylum. I don't know if I want to see them in this new format, but instead people have been overwhelmingly supportive of it. And I can tell you, like on Twitter, every Tuesday night, it's become like one big family. I've made so many new friends from just talking to people there, like Chrissy and Ashley and all these people that are like retweeting everything that everybody's putting out. We've seen people who have been huge super fans of other paranormal shows that have been converted over. I even reconnected with Rebecca from my third grade class.
That's
just
really
by
funny.
Tweeting stuff. So
the
paranormal brings the whole world together.
See that? If it weren't for ghosts, where would we all be right now?
Ironically, we found out that like 4 people from our elementary school all are into the paranormal now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's so weird. But again, it's not, because I remember, being the kid on the playground talking about, hey, do you guys ever have any weird stuff happen? And like, no.
And everybody thought you were strange.
But they probably should have said yes, because they were having it happen too. But that's what's great about it, is it's such a community of people. And I know that you guys refer to them as Wraith Nation, and it really is that. It really is a supportive group. And they all say it. They say they can't believe how interactive that all of you guys are with them. That they'll put something out and, you'll like a tweet, or Doogie will respond to a tweet, or Chris will retweet something, and people just, they can't believe it. They're like, these are guys that are on TV, but like you said, you're just regular guys that just happen to have a TV show.
That's it. We have some of the greatest fans. I mean, I can't tell you, I can't tell you a day that goes by that I don't go to the mailbox and there's their post office box and there's something there. Fans send us gifts, T-shirts, coffee cups, coffee. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And then I've got fans that send my son stuff. They sent Doogie's son stuff. It's such a cool community and a very giving community. And then they really, I think that they all enjoy, seeing us, doing what we do, and they enjoy helping us along like that. and being part of it, because Wraith Nation, it kind of took on a life of itself. We coined that term and kind of said, that's what everybody is out there. It's a whole nation of people who support us, and it's our Wraith Chaser Nation, and so that's where the Wraith Nation came from. But we've got the greatest fans in the world. I can't say that enough about them, and they follow us to a T. I mean, gosh, I know there's some people that have driven hours upon hours just to come have pizza with us, and they're great. They're super. They're really cool people, and we enjoy hanging out with them, and they're not just fans; they become friends, and it's a cool thing.
It really is unique that the people can embrace a show, a television show, and still kind of understand that. You know what I'm saying? Like, when there's always like that some degree of distance that people want to keep between themselves. So, you're on TV, you have to know that there's going to be some people out there that aren't always just happy to see you. Some people are going to be trying to cause a problem. Some people are going to create an issue. But it seems like your fans are just like salt of the earth people, like you guys are. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff with them. You don't have to worry about somebody pretending to be your friend and then blasting you online like I see happen with other shows. I remember people trashing when I was working on Ghost Stalkers, people trashing Ghost Stalkers online, but then posting pictures of themselves with Nick Roth and being like, oh, I love Nick Roth and everything that he does. They're supportive 100%. There's no wavering, and I think that's because they know that you guys have their backs too.
Yeah, and that's the cool part about it is we haven't had to experience a lot of that. I mean, we have had some. We've had I think being in the public eye, you have to always be aware that there's a whole world out there of eyes that are looking at you, and not all of them look at you favorably. People are very passionate about their beliefs and very passionate about things that they don't believe in. To a point to where, you look, going back to history, that particular concept has started wars. And so, there are people who have come after us as far as, verbally. There's been some situations where we've had to get what we call, quote unquote, the men in black after them, just, because they've gotten a little bit out of hand. You have to take it all with a grain of salt, but when you start getting to a point to where it's threatening, then you have to send the Discovery Men in Black and those guys that have the little badges that have the 3 letters on them out to talk to them, and and that tends to settle things down a little bit. But we haven't had to deal with a lot of that. It's our fan base has been, like you said, they're super supportive. They're just like us, plain old folks, and just have an interest in the paranormal and like to watch our antics on TV.
See, I don't want to give away the secrets of things that I do to people, but so whenever somebody trashes one of the shows that I work on, if they they want to be like, oh yeah, Haunted Towns is great, but it's so fake. Like, I like to just tweet underneath it, hey, thanks for watching. And then the next thing you know is they'll tweet back and say, well, yeah, I really do enjoy the show. And then they'll say, so what is it that you think is fake? Well, it just seems coincidental that they're going to these places and all this stuff is happening. And I say, well, maybe all this stuff is happening because they're going to the place where all this stuff is happening. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So, it's easy to kind of, and then the next thing you know, they're, fans that are there every week watching every episode.
Yep. That's it. And that's something I've done as well. I've seen people before who will, post stuff on there and bash us a little bit. And, it's like, the thing is just, if you're bashing us, then you had to watch it. So, hey, I appreciate that. Keep watching. And, who knows, we might win you over one day.
Every week I watch this show and I can't understand why.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter why. Just keep watching.
Just keep watching. Keep turning the TV on.
Especially if you have one of those Nielsen boxes.
Right.
Oh, I mean, but Stephanie, like I said, you're kind of that perfect example of a person that doesn't watch these kinds of shows, but you will watch a show that has your interest, and that,
or myself,
and but you'll watch something that will give you something more than just, you're not into watching people running around in the dark and getting scared.
Right.
So this is a show that's more about that, and I think a lot of the new generation of shows that are coming out are getting beyond that because they realize that the audience is getting beyond that. and the audience wants a little something more.
No, I agree with you. I think the aspect of the history from this one for sure drew me in. Even I mean, not to be a shameless plug, but Kindred Spirits, the idea behind it of just actually
premiere September 15th.
Yep, TLC, 9 p.m. Eastern. The idea of going into a place in a person's home and investigating and actually doing something to help them and digging up the research and maybe bringing in a psychic and doing different things that you don't normally see on TV.
She dropped that just so that you don't forget for season 2.
Season 2. 2 episodes this time.
Just so you know, Stephanie, well, so the audience knows, you were in discussions for helping out the guys. We just didn't go to the locations that we were going to need your help with.
Right.
But there's hopefully season 2 coming up, which I know that, I heard Porter mention it on another radio show, and I've heard it mentioned before. We will try to find you some more warm weather places, some tropical at least one tropical location every season.
Can I go to that one?
I think Stephanie has said that she is cold natured, so
yes.
she would have to go to the warm weather location.
I would have to.
we will keep digging at all these tropical places and seeing what we can find.
I think that's great.
But
they could do Hawaii round 2. I'd be all right with that.
There's talk of it. There's places that I think
Hawaii round 2 would be amazing.
even if you can't find any places to investigate, just get sent out there anyway.
Right.
But, there's beaches to investigate everywhere in Hawaii.
Right, and you can investigate those during the day. That's the best part about it.
You sound like you need help with that.
Yes. And the Mai Tais are amazing.
I don't need to explore those.
Mai Tais are those new paranormal devices, right, that you use to detect spirits.
That's it.
Well, and speaking of which, you guys have had some pretty interesting and new equipment on the show this year. I mean, you're using some of the tried and true stuff that you always utilize and get good results from, but you're also trying some different stuff. I've seen the Poltercom on there and some of the Paranology stuff, and it seems like you guys are really thinking outside the box for the stuff that you're using.
Yeah, we're trying to get away from just using your basic equipment. I mean, that's one of the things that we've worked with Paranologies and with some other folks we've been talking to. We tried to get some other equipment on the show this season, and it just couldn't get developed in time. And then we had worked on some other items too that just they seemed to run into roadblocks. But the Paranologies group has really come through for us. We kind of give them some ideas about what we're looking for, and man, they've went above and beyond building equipment for us. I mean, the periscopes, the vertical and the horizontal periscopes. I mean, those things have been amazing, picking up electrostatic energy. There's the EVP recorders that they have. That thing was kind of cool. There were several items that we used on there. The floodlights, the IR floodlights have been a lifesaver in some of those bigger locations where we had to flood a room with IR to be able to see it all the way across the room. I mean, the Oglethorpe house is a prime example of that. They had a huge room there and it had to have a lot of IR. So, we're hopeful that if we get to go into season 2, that you're going to see some even cooler stuff, some real neat equipment that. We've had the opportunity to play with off camera that produce some phenomenal results. So maybe as we move along, you'll see something that's really going to pique your interest.
Well, speaking of potential stuff for a potential season 2, the last time that we investigated together, you got to see a device in action, and I've been talking with the developer of that. And he will be supplying one if there is a season 2. So we will have one of those.
Don't say if, say when.
When
there is a season 2.
When there's a season 2, that piece of equipment that we had at that other location, that thing, I've had an opportunity to work with one of those before, and it produced phenomenal results. I mean, stuff that I just could not explain. I mean, the intelligence that came through that device was outstanding. So I was trying to get one of those for this season. It just didn't work out. But that one that you've got there, I am very impressed, and I'm looking forward to utilizing that definitely in season 2.
And even though we can't give away that much information about it, we will say it'll be in the house on Saturday night when we're investigating, right? Because the owner bought tickets, so she'll be there.
Yes, she will be there.
So it will be there this Saturday night if you want to come and check it out for yourself.
Do we need to call it a prototype, or is it full-blown manufacturing now?
Well, this is, I think they've been making a bunch of different ones, and what's interesting about it is, and for those, I mean, I know that we're kind of talking around things here for the audience, but it's basically a communications device, one of these echo chamber speaker devices, like the different boxes that you see out there. But one of the things that they've been doing with this, the gentlemen that are making these, is they've been doing different builds in like retro vintage radios. And so they built some ones that look really cool, like 1930s radios turned into these things. And some of them look more modern and sleeker. And they've got some really, really good ideas that I think we'll be poaching some of those from them and having them help out when season 2 happens.
I like the way you said that. When?
Well,
when? You got to change the way that you put it out there.
But you also don't want to be cocky either and make assumptions about things.
It's not being cocky. It's putting it out to the universe what you want.
The secret.
Keep him honest. Keep him honest, Steph. I'm not there.
Listen, every thought in your head goes out to the universe like a boomerang and comes back to you. Every positive thought brings back positive. Every negative thought brings back negative. Every unsure thought brings back something unsure. So you have to be confident that when there's a season 2, and that will come back to you. If you put out,
I am confident there will be a season 2, and we're going to Hawaii.
Yes. And
or maybe,
and bringing me with you.
Maybe the Caribbean.
Yeah.
The Caribbean's a possibility.
I like the Caribbean. I've never been, but I like it.
I may have visited a Caribbean island last spring that I think might actually fit the bill for a future potential Haunted Towns episode. You would need a passport,
okay.
Yes.
I should probably get on that.
I don't know if you definitely need one for this place.
I think so.
I don't think it was a must. I think it was kind of like...
Hey, I've got mine. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, you're all set.
Nobody asked you.
But I do think that one of the advantages to going to these places that are kind of, with this season, a lot of the places that you visit are kind of already on the paranormal map. So people do know about them. But you also have the chance to go to places that nobody's ever heard of. And it seems like it was just coincidental that the way the schedule shaked out, you're visiting places at some of their most quaintest times. So, you get to go to McDonough, Georgia, but you go there when they're having their annual, flower festival. You go to Bisbee, Arizona. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that they did this thing, but you went to Bisbee during Bisbee and Wonderland, right?
Yeah, yes.
So I already heard that Bisbee was kind of a strange and unique place, but you got it during its most strange and unique weekend.
What happened?
I will tell you what. Yeah, it was an experience unto its own. Bisbee's an awesome place, no doubt. I mean, it's a very different community there, but a beautiful town. And then you add to that the all the Alice in Wonderland folks. And it's like, man, when did I fall through that rabbit hole?
That
it
sounds
was
fun.
It was really neat, and there were some different characters there. So it was there was paranormal activity inside, and there was, for sure enough, some paranormal activity outside.
That's when I saw some of the photographs of what goes on there. I was like, oh, because we're trying to make some the advance calls before the team shows up to find out, hey, tell us some of the good places they should look at, and also trying to do things like make arrangements for where people can stay, because you've got a crew that has to have a bed at the end of the night or early morning whenever you're done investigating, and so you're trying to find rooms, and they're saying, well, that's the weekend that Bisbee and Wonderland's going on. What is this? But we knew that it was like this artistic community that had sprung up there, and that's what really drew that as a good go-to place, because you've got this place where all this amazing activity is happening, but also it's developed itself into a character. And what's great about Haunted Towns is all the towns are like a character on the show. They're like a fully divined character.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some of them are just more characteristic than others.
I figured.
And it's funny because people say to me, like, when they see the list of spots where you guys went and they find out that I was involved in, working on the show, and they say, well, how come you went to this place, and how come you didn't go to this place, and how come you didn't go to this place? Like, well, slow down. You can't have them stay up in New England for the entire season. They could have.
Right.
There's enough weird places for them to investigate around here.
God,
but
yes.
of course, naturally, one of the places that we had to have the guys come up and try and investigate and put the threads together was Fall River.
Right.
And the Lizzie Borden story. And I don't know if it's some sort of meta cross-promotion concept that, Discovery was working on overall with TLC and Destination America, but we're about to hit like Lizzie Borden Armageddon here, because September 15th is the premiere of Kindred Spirits on TLC. That deals with Lizzie Borden.
Right.
According to the current schedule that I see on my TV right now and online, September 19th will be Haunted Towns taking on Lizzie Borden. And then September 23rd, we will actually be taking on Lizzie Borden's.
Yes, we will.
With an event that we've never tried before, but always talked about doing, where we bring old school and new school investigations together. Porter's going to come up for that. Ty Gowan's coming down from Maine for it. It's going to be like Lizzie Borden Festival there for like a week plus.
It's going to be a good time.
Should have things really stirred up. I'm sorry, I keep stepping on you, Stephanie.
Oh, that's all right.
No, you can step right on her. You're the guest. She's just a co-host.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Fall River is a unique place. We know it. We deal with it here. Our audience that listens locally, they know what Fall River is like.
Of course.
And it's one of those places where you're telling the story of what happened there in 1892, but then you're seeing 2017 Fall River around you, and it's a quite different place.
Oh, you could go right outside and investigate plenty.
And I do believe that there was a few arrests that happened around you guys while you were filming up there.
Oh my gosh! You know what's funny? I think we've had arrests happen around us in several locations. But yeah, there was a few there. There was one in Gettysburg. There was actually one in Gettysburg where they actually drugged the woman out of the restaurant we were shooting in. She was, yeah, it was kind of interesting. Cameras were rolling and she's in handcuffs going to the back of the patrol car. But kicking and screaming, I might add.
That would have made a great episode of Cops too. In addition, double dipping.
I can see it. Yeah, just kind of mix all the shows up together there. That would be perfect.
But it seems like that's going to happen when you go to places. Is you're trying to investigate kind of the history of it and the character of its history, and sometimes the modern day stuff is going to impede and step into it, and that's a lot of the problems that we have when we go to some of these historic places, like the Mark Twain House is in Hartford, Connecticut, and it's a beautiful mansion, and there's a museum building there and everything, and this is where Mark Twain lived for a number of years and wrote some of his greatest stuff. And when you go there, it's in the middle of the ghetto. The city, the inner city has sprung up around where Mark Twain lived, because I went there and I made the joke, why did Mark Twain build this awesome house in the middle of the ghetto? And but that's the thing. It's like modern day America kind of springs up around these historical places and can kind of wash away a lot of that character. But you guys have been able to go to places where that's still retained.
Yeah, I think that's one of the keys to it. I mean, especially for the audience, you can go in there and you can talk about it, but it's something else to be able to put those visuals to that time frame. If you're able to go in and show photographs of what it was like, or artist renderings of what it was like, and then you come back and you show the modern times, and you can see the similarities, and you can see the differences. I mean, I think it really helps paint that picture of what it was like back in the day. And not unlike something like going to Bisbee. One of the things that we did while we were there, one of the things on my bucket list was to go to Tombstone, and really wanted to do an episode in Tombstone, but it didn't work out. But when we wrapped shooting at Bisbee, we drove over to Tombstone and just hung out. And I think it was so neat just, to get there and to, having seen pictures of the town and you see movies and so on and so forth, but seeing pictures of the town and then getting there and looking at it and realizing that all those adobe structures were there, during the time that Wyatt Earp was there and the Earps moved in. I think that was one of the coolest things about it, because the town is burnt twice, completely down, but those adobe structures are the original adobe structures. So, it may be modern day, but that's what it was like back then. And just like with, Salem and with with Gettysburg and any of these other locations, you get there and you look at the buildings. I mean, like in Gettysburg, you look at the building and you see a parrot shell, a cannonball, or something stuck in the side of a building, and that was shot there and it's still there. They've bricked up to it and bricked around it to keep it there, and it's one of those things that you can overlook if you're not looking for it. But I think that really helps to paint the picture for the audience and get them involved in it.
Oh, speaking of cannonballs, I'll just give a little teaser for this week's episode in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So
yes.
Yeah, definitely tune in if cannonballs are your thing. You definitely want to tune in to Vicksburg. I'll tell you off the air, Stephanie. But she's giving me this look like what? But
who says if cannonballs are your thing?
Some people are into cannonballs. I don't know. Everybody has their thing. Some people are into cannonballs.
I was not sure where this show was going for a minute.
Well, that's how I felt just now. Like, what do you mean you're a thing? Listen, we've had some pretty weird conversations.
Listen, I'll show it. There's some websites I'll show you after
exactly.
the show.
That's what I figured.
So,
all right, awesome.
Oh my gosh, here goes the website.
But people will ask me. They'll say, okay, well, you work as the researcher. You're doing research for these shows. What does that entail? And a big part of that is, just finding out how much of these stories have legs, how much of these things that we hear, how much of these urban legends that we hear about places are actually something that's worth investigating. How much of it can be historically and scientifically proven? We're basically trying to save you guys time so that when you get there, you don't have to deal with stories that turn out to be dead ends and stuff that you heard or may have heard that turns out not to be the truth. And that's one of the challenges with a lot of these towns, like wanting to go to a place like Tombstone or places like that. I know there was another town, I can't think of what it was, that was suggested, but a lot of the stories that came back, I'm like, a lot of this stuff just sounds like it's tourist trappy. It sounds like they're just trying to get people to visit these places. And every town has that place that has that story that doesn't make any sense. Like George Washington could not have slept everywhere, but that doesn't stop people from saying that George Washington slept here. And when you look back at some of these connections that you're trying to make and trying to see these bigger picture locations, some places might have a ton of haunted locations, but there's nothing that brings them all together. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that you've seen that in a lot of your investigations over the time too, that, sometimes there doesn't seem to be a reason why. It's just like a bunch of different paranormal phenomena taking place that you really can't find a reason why it would all be interconnected.
Yeah, and you run into that. It's whether or not it's some type of portal or something connected to the land itself with the geological makeup. With the ley lines work out with the locations or whatever it may be. You have a lot of activity, but there's no common thread. There's nothing that really ties it together. But then, like, you get into some of these locations that have this the history that you can tie together, and then has the you have these events where they happen in different locations, but they all seem to be having a similar paranormal interaction. That's a unique thing, and it's tough to find, but it's when you find it though, it makes for a really cool investigation when you start piecing the story together.
And I know that one of the stories that you guys have been chasing after your whole careers, and it's come up in the chat room here a couple of times, and people have always mentioned it, and we've worked on it again and again, and that's the Bell Witch story. And I know that is something that's really close to you guys' hearts.
Yeah, I tell you what, you start talking about the Bell Witch. That's one of those documented stories of paranormal activity in history that actually has a death connected to it. It's like the only one that I know of. We've tried to get in there, and for one reason or another, it just hasn't worked out. I think the first time we tried to get in, we'd had a lot of rain, and the cave was full of water. And then there were some other issues, after that. I think another paranormal group did a TV show there, and then I think they kind of didn't take care of the place, kind of like what we do. If we go somewhere, we take care of it just like it's ours. We want to leave it better than what we found it.
Right.
Some teams, some groups, some productions go in, and they're not as careful and take as great a care as what we do, and so it kind of leaves a bad path for us to follow up, and so then we have to try to rebuild some of those relationships because they assume that we're going to be the same way. So we still have hopes and dreams of getting in there and trying to investigate that location and put it on the show. And maybe someday we will. It's right up the road from us here, and being in such close proximity to home, it only seems natural that we would investigate that location.
I mean, for everybody that has been asking, and like I said, it came up a couple times in the chat room, and people tweet it to me all the time. A little behind the scenes, breaking down the fourth wall information. The last 2 seasons of Ghost Asylum and this season of Haunted Towns, we've tried for all of those to make it happen, and there's some issues there. We've even found a way that we've even found like the real story behind the story, and even that is keeping us from being able to make all this happen. But it will happen at some point. And if it can't happen for an episode, we'll make it happen for something you guys can do kind of behind the scenes on your own anyway.
Yeah, it's got to happen. I mean, there's been so much work put into that location and trying to put that story together and dig and find all the back end, and it's there, it's ready to go. It would be a phenomenal episode. Moreover, though, it would be a phenomenal investigation. I mean, it's one of those bucket list locations that you've got to do.
I'll give you a little behind the scenes stuff that I found, and I don't know how much your research matches up with this that you've done as well, but the caves have nothing to do with the actual story.
Not a single thing. It's all made up with the publicity and press about it.
The real story, you know where to go for the real story. And those are the places that we already, everything's kind of all laid out for it to happen. It just, everything has to line up correctly. So again, when season 2 happens,
when
it would make a great
season 2 happens,
be a great season premiere. So we'll work on.
It certainly would. There's another one that we've been kicking around too about doing a hometown episode, because right here in Middle Tennessee, there's a lot of history here, a lot connected to the Civil War, a lot connected to the westward expansion, Trail of Tears, Native Americans. There's a lot here, and I think that one of the things that we would love to do in the future would be a hometown episode where we investigate our hometown. And kind of showcase it. So that's another one that we've kind of been kicking around as well.
Well, and there's the event coming up in Columbia too with Stephanie, and that's a place that we've been eyeing as a potential location because of some of the strange stories that have come out of there, and some of the really some of the places that are there have like a dark history to them.
There's a lot around here that does that, but I bet Stephanie knows a lot more about the history on Columbia than what I do.
I actually don't.
Well,
never mind.
You should know more. You live there.
Between Christy and I, we will brief you guys with everything that you need.
Perfect.
Christy was a great resource when I was looking into places down that way.
Yep.
Because she has so much experience being down there and investigating places, and because the guys who actually live there, the big important TV stars, I wasn't allowed to ask them questions.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
She's looking at me like, what? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know how much Christy wants me to know going into that, and I haven't even asked either. I just said, let's do it. Because I've actually never been to Tennessee, so this will be my first time.
I'm just going to assume there's somewhere where there's just a room full of dolls.
Why would you say that?
Because there's one everywhere.
Listen, you know what to say to make me not walk into a place. Dolls, clowns, or aliens is on that list.
There might be a room full of aliens somewhere, too.
You're a mean person.
E.T. landed in Tennessee, didn't he?
Stop it. All right, I'm not coming to Tennessee anymore.
Well, I mean that's one of the things too that I've noticed from a lot of these towns, that in doing this research and looking into these places, it's not just ghosts that happen in a lot of these places. It's like what we have here in the Bridgewater Triangle. It's like it runs the whole gamut of paranormal activity.
Yeah, it really does. You start looking at it, and not only is it the typical paranormal activity of ghosts, supernatural activity, but you've also got other creatures as well. I mean, there's so many stories of creatures, different types of creatures, that yet to be discovered or yet to be found. Which who knows what's out there? We're constantly discovering a new species, in our environment, in our world. We do not know everything about our world. We're still learning. We're still very young as a society. So we're still discovering, and who knows? There's always the possibility that there could be something out there lurking that we've just caught glimpses of and haven't seen, and a lot of these places do. They have those stories because people have experienced it. I mean, I think I read somewhere not too awful long ago that some marine biologists discovered that there was still a megalodon in the ocean, or what they believe to be a megalodon. So there's there who knows what's out there lurking around. And then of course there's the whole thing that Stephanie doesn't like, the aliens. There's critters that are not from this world. With our universe as vast as it is, we've not looked at it and examined all of it. Is there a possibility that there's something out there? Of course there is. What is its level of intelligence comparable to us? Who knows? But it would be we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we said that there was not a possibility that there's something out there, considering how vast it is.
Listen, before you make that face, Stephanie, one of the towns I'm looking into for a potential season 2 episode, Roswell.
Seriously?
And I'm not talking about the one in Georgia.
That's not the one I'm going to, right?
I will leave that.
I already voted for Hawaii.
My that's way above my pay grade, deciding if you can be involved in an episode.
Yeah, no, we can decide I'm not involved in that one.
Porter, let's push for her to go to the one with the aliens.
I think she has to go to the one with the aliens to be able to go to the one in Hawaii.
She needs to be able to communicate with the extraterrestrial beings.
I thought we were friends.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to get you there.
It's you got to give a little to get a little. That's the way that it goes.
Oh God.
You can actually communicate with. I'd say you could communicate with the deceased Roswell alien, but I actually have her phone number, so we can just call her directly. Porter, we once interviewed a woman on this show that claimed to be the reincarnated Roswell alien.
Shut your mouth.
She went by the name Commander Sani Cito. It is still one of the most talked about episodes in the almost 12 years of doing this show. She got into an argument with our usual co-host who isn't here tonight, who is a chemist, about some of the propulsion systems that operated her ship, and was basically making up a bunch of stuff that wouldn't even work in physics. And when he called her out on it, she got really upset and hung up on us.
It was ridiculous.
Well, it's funny though too that you say that you bring up physics and that it doesn't work within a physics. That's one of the things that I have debated with people throughout my entire paranormal career, was that how can this happen? It can't happen because physics says it can't happen. I was like, well, when you're talking about supernatural, don't you think that the supernatural beings live beyond our laws of physics and biology and chemistry and mathematics? Is it possible that all these other things out here live beyond those as well? So it's an interesting concept, but I think that having someone who says that they are the reincarnate alien, and well, Stephanie, were you there for that episode?
I don't think I was in studio for that, but I have had to talk about it and listen about it forever. I actually do pretty good with somehow not being here during alien episodes. I think I have gotten caught a few times. Actually, I think the last alien episode I had to talk about was... You
were here when we talked about owls and aliens,
I
weren't
was
you?
there when we talked about owls and aliens, and I was really uncomfortable with that. And I don't remember which one it was now, but where they were a little offended that I was terrified.
Yeah, that can happen.
But I would like to thank both of you now, because the chat room is blowing up with people asking about aliens, clowns, and dolls. And I would like to add that sharks are on that list as well.
Well,
sharks.
So Key West is out for Stephanie then.
I don't have to swim with them.
Because they have a doll. They have Robert the doll. They have sharks. There's probably aliens.
Aliens would go to Key West for sure.
Sure, absolutely. They have to go on vacation somewhere.
I'm all right. Oh my God.
You had mentioned, Porter, thinking that ghosts don't have to obey the rules of physics, or that the paranormal doesn't have to obey the rules of physics. Let's kind of just get into that in the last few minutes we have here of the show. Of what do you think is what's out there that you're encountering when you're doing these investigations? Because I know that your faith is a big part of your life, and different people have different approaches to what they think a ghost could be. I don't know if I believe that it's the soul of a dead person. I don't know if it actually is somebody kind of coming back from the great beyond, as much as it is kind of just their essence being trapped here. So what do you think? What's your gut tell you about what it is that you're interacting with?
And over time, and having seen all this, and having interviewed a lot of people who have had experiences, there's there's too many experiences out there by people who are non-believers or were non-believers for there not to be some type of validity or some validity to it. Now, for me, I have my faith in one bucket, I have my science in another bucket, and I believe that, our soul is our soul, and it's going to go where it goes, depending on your relationship with God at the end of time, at the end of your time. But, we have energy in us. We have elements in us. Our body returns to the dust of the earth. And so there's energy there that will dissipate upon death, and who's to say that energy does not stay as some type of collective after it leaves the body, not necessarily the soul. Maybe the soul and the energy are two different things, and then the energy has some resemblance of us and remains behind and is able to carry on some type of interaction that is has some similarity to the individual that contained that energy. I've also speculated with Brandon. We've had conversations ad nauseum about it. Like I was talking about earlier, we're still learning about our universe. We're still learning about our world. We're discovering new species of life and energies all the time. So who's to say that there's not some type of collective energy out there that's able to interact with us and take on some type of persona and mingle with us or respond to our questions with some form of intelligence, but just not be confined to a biological home or a body. So there's lots of theories out there, and I'm open to listen and discuss any of them. I think that any higher level thinking individual that would agree that you have to always remain open to the concepts of learning and discovery, because at the moment that you think you know it all, you will be sadly mistaken and find out that you don't. So it's one of those things. It's the jury's still out. I don't think we will. I don't know if we'll ever unravel, all those secrets. I think we can get close. I hope we can get close. But I think that after having some of the interactions that I've had, there's definitely something out there. I don't know what name or what title I can put on it, but I can tell you that it's intelligent. It understands what we're talking about, and it's able to communicate back with us.
And what about those? Because we encounter it here. We have there's a lot of Portuguese community where we are, and they're very superstitious about talking about this kind of stuff, but they're also very faith-based as well. And I'm sure that you've encountered some who say, well, you're believers, you have faith in God, and that's a big part of who you are as people, but what you guys do goes against God. You're out talking to these, like I got into an argument with somebody this week that thinks that all paranormal entities are demons just trying to mess with people, and I'm sure that you encounter some people that say, how do you what's the word I'm looking for? How do you kind of rationalize that with your faith to be able to go out and to chase after these things?
Well, I think that your faith is your personal relationship with God, and there are rules that go along with that have been established, and some of those rules were established by man, not by God. But I think that you look back through the annals of history, and just like what we're talking about a few moments ago, the Salem witch trials. I mean, there were people who were put to death just because people didn't understand science, biology, or health. If someone had a skin tag, they were thought to be a witch. Or they could be thought to be a witch. I mean, if I came up to you, 200 years ago or 250 years ago, whatever, and I had a Bic lighter and offered to light up your smoking device, whatever that might be, you would have thought I was a witch or a warlock or something because I held fire in my hand. So I think that as we evolve as a society and we discover and we learn, there are things that are explained through science. And I think that we're able to pursue those scientifically or as a higher level thinking society. But the unique thing that we've been able to do as far as our TWC team is we hold strong with our faith and our relationship with God. I don't think that He would have placed us here and put us in these positions and allowed us to find and discover if it wasn't meant to be. And I think that we've tried to understand that there are some entities and beings out there among us, demons, so to speak. You think about a demon. What's a demon's job? A demon's job is deceive and turn people away from God's plan. And what better way to do that than to appear to you as someone that you loved and lost in life and make you think they still walk the earth, or their soul still walks the earth, which does not coincide with the biblical version of what God's plan is. So there's that's the Christian Bible. I mean, there's other religious texts as well, and other interpretations that you could have to consider.
Right.
I think that for me, I try to have these conversations with people who question it, and I'm not looking to worship or to garner specific knowledge of things that I should not have knowledge of, but I'm looking to understand. I mean, there's too many pieces of the puzzle out there that people have experienced, very religious people who have experienced phenomena that they can't explain, and I don't think that you can believe in God and not believe in the supernatural, because what is God? God is supernatural.
And there's a reason why every culture has a word for ghosts. There's a reason why every religion mentions ghosts. There's something to it that goes beyond just what it is that we're taught to believe.
Absolutely.
And now that we've gotten all the heavy stuff out of the way, I'm getting told on Twitter that you actually do have to go to the Roswell in Georgia too. So, luckily we already have a great expert in Roswell, Georgia, Diana Avina. So we can definitely make that happen too.
That one is Sans Aliens, right?
That's the one without the aliens. That's just the ghost Roswell.
I'll go to that one.
It's not the alien Roswell. All right, so we'll put that on the list of potential Stephanie locations of where she will go. It's going to be really weird when season 2 does happen, and they're like, "Well, what are some of the places that the guys can go to? Where do you want to go, Porter?" And he can be like, "Well, here's my Stephanie list, and here's my non-Stephanie list."
God. Listen,
aliens, and dolls and clowns.
Maybe I'll suck it up. Maybe I will suck it up and go.
But one way or another, you're gonna meet Robert the doll now. That's gonna happen. All right. Well, Porter, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're just about out of time, but of course, we get to have these conversations off the air next Saturday night when we all get to hang out.
Right.
In Winchendon instead of Gardner. We're no longer at the SK Pierce. We'll be at the Murdoch Whitney House and the Isaac Morris House. 2 great locations to come and investigate. Come on out, hang out with Porter, hang out with Shari from Ghost Hunters, hang out with Stephanie and myself and John Brightman. And, of course, we'll have all the links and everything for people to get those tickets on social media. So, see, you're starting to really take a shine to New England now, huh? Even with the snow in Salem, you still keep coming back.
Hey, man, I'll tell you what, I love it up there, and it's been one of those locations that I always want to go to and visit all up through New England and even up into the far north there, and it's I enjoy it, and I've made some great friends, and Tim, you're not too bad yourself.
Well, thank you for that. Just for that, I'll make sure that I send you to all cold locations next season.
Oh my God.
Actually, they get the final say. I can only make suggestions. They get to say where they actually want to go.
I think you guys should do a Bigfoot episode with the Mount Washington next season, and I should go to that one too.
Oh, but Bigfoot she's not afraid of.
Well,
you mean you're okay? So you're afraid of aliens, clowns, dolls, sharks, but Bigfoot. Hey, I'm gonna party with Bigfoot. That's what I'm hearing.
What if Bigfoot showed up like in full clown makeup?
Why would you even say that?
It's a possibility.
Carrying a doll and walking with an alien.
Just drop me off at the hotel and leave me there then. If there's going to be a clown possibility, I'm done. I can't.
Well, that does it for this week's show. Join us next week when our guest is the Insane Clown Posse.
You're terrible. I actually had a really messed up experience at Mount Washington with Ty that we talked about. So I'd love to go back and see what else happens.
Cool.
She's telling us she wants us to create episodes based on where she wants to go.
Well, I can just go visit them in that one.
All right. So again, thank you for joining us, Porter. We will definitely talk to you next Saturday. To everybody else out there, we will not be here next Saturday. I think Matt might come in and do a show. We're still waiting to find out Monize's schedule, because he's all over the place. But Porter, thanks for joining us. We'll see you Saturday.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all. Take care. See you, Stephanie.
Bye.
And that is Porter from the TWC and from Haunted Towns. Tuesday nights, 10 o'clock, Destination America. Tune in, watch it, share it on social media, tweet about it, watch it on Facebook Live when the guys do their thing. It's really a great little community. Like I said, I've been making a lot of friends off of this.
I have noticed how busy you've been.
And what's funny is I watched Ghost Asylum when I was working on that, and it just didn't have the same vibe. The people weren't, people were tweeting about it, but it wasn't like this community that's come together around haunted towns. And I think when you go out there and you're showing these guys real personalities, the audience is buying into that.
I think that's a huge part of it for sure.
And the overarching point of all this is not every paranormal show has to be about what scary stuff happens in the dark. Sometimes it can be about the camaraderie of the people involved and the way that they approach things and the history. So let's hope that when season 2 does happen, we get to keep exploring it like that. And so thank you to everybody that watches that show. Thank you to everybody that tuned into this show. Again, we're not going to be on next Saturday night. Stephanie and I won't be. Moniz and Matt might come in and do a show. Moniz has to see what his schedule is going on. But just taking a look at the calendar real quick. So that means that we will be back on the air, you and I anyway, September 16th.
Right.
So because of that, we want to remind everybody to just make sure that they tune into Kindred Spirits. The season premiere is September 15th on TLC, and that's going to feature the Lizzie Borden episode, the Lizzie Borden story that is part of what it is that they're investigating. And I believe Chip Coffey is in that episode as well.
Chip Coffey will be on that episode, yes.
So, and you'll get to see a little bit of Fall River in that one too, some other places beyond the house. And then September 19th, you'll get to see more of Fall River in Haunted Towns. And then September 23rd, you can actually come out and experience the Lizzie Borden house with myself and Stephanie and Ty and Porter. We're all going to be there, and there's like seven or eight tickets left.
That's awesome.
So get those at SpookySouthCoast.com right now, because they will be gone by the time those shows are on TV, it'll definitely
be gone completely. We always sell that one out. It's a great event. Very limited people are allowed to come. I love it. It's a weird house. I've been having some strange experiences.
We're going to make it even weirder this time with the way that we're going to do things.
We are.
Ty messaged me. Well, I think you were in the message. And he said, "What can I bring? What can I bring? Bring yourself and bring those Victorian era clothes that you have, because we need at least one person to dress up for it."
Right.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week. Until next time, for Matt, for Stephanie, for Chris, for Ashley, I'm Tim. We want you all to stay spooktacular.